Before I begin today's edition, a quick note. To be honest, I feel a bit uncomfortable writing this newsletter and reading this podcast in the shadow of what's been going on over the past week in India. I suppose the defining trait of a military conflict is that it makes everything look much less important in comparison. For everyone who's living in or has loved ones in border areas or in the Indian Armed Forces, I hope you're safe and well and that the situation de escalates soon. I realize that writing about tech and business feels insignificant when missiles are flying, but it's all I have and all I know to offer. Take care and let's live in hope. Today's edition of the Nutgraf is titled Can Rapido Become Ola Before Ola Becomes Rapido? One of them is on the way up, the other is on the way down. This is Praveen Gopal Krishnan, and today's edition is published on 10th May 2025. Something caught my eye yesterday, and yes, it's about my favorite company. Here's the story from Financial Express titled Vanguard slashes Ola's valuation to 1.25 billion, down 80% from peak. And the story goes, quote, US-based asset management company Vanguard has marked down Ola's valuation to 1.25 billion according to an SEC filing. This represents more than 80% drop from its peak valuation of 7.3 billion in 2021. In February last year, Vanguard had, for the first time, valued the Bhavesh Agarwal-led company below the $2 billion mark at 1.88 billion. However, it later revalued the company at around 2 billion in November. The latest development comes as Ola continues to lose ground in the ride-hailing space. Rapido has emerged as the market leader, rapidly expanding market leadership in bike taxis to its auto rickshaw and cabs business, followed by Uber, with Ola now relegated to the third spot. End quote. If you've been reading me for a while, you'll know by now that I usually tell subscribers not to read too much into startup valuations. Unicorn clubs are not too different from unicorns themselves. They are fictional creatures. In fact, nobody knows this better than Bhavesh Agarwal, co-founder and CEO of Ola, who practically created a unicorn called Krutrim out of thin air. Startup valuations are just imaginary animals. Anyway, today I'm going to break that rule for the only good reason to do it. That is, to tell a great story. While Vanguard was marking Ola's valuation down periodically, another ride-hailing startup's valuation has been moving in the opposite direction. In September last year, Rapido raised $200 billion from Westbridge Capital, which valued the company at $1.1 billion. So to summarize, at least one of Ola's investors believe that Ola is worth around $1.2 billion, and at least one of Rapido's investors believe that Rapido is worth around $1.1 billion. Even if you ignore their specific valuations, the trend is uncontestable. Ola's been falling, Rapido's climbing, and now their paths cross in a moment of reversal. How did this happen? And what happens next? Well, depending on how you think about it, three reasons come to mind. One theory is that Rapido simply out-executed Ola. When we were discussing Rapido in the Ken's internal Slack, Sitaramanji, deputy editor and Tamil meme expert at the Ken, wrote, regardless of how successful Rapido is, I just find the business it's in, ride-hailing and food delivery, so monumentally boring now. They're like steel and cement. What can Rapido do now that's unique? End quote. After taking suitable offense on behalf of my family, because both my father and my father-in-law spent their entire careers in cement and steel respectively, I had to admit that Sita was probably right. Maybe the answer is boring. That is, Rapido simply out-executed Ola. There's some evidence for this. Rapido's revenues have been climbing every year while Ola's declined last year. Rapido has been growing, expanding its products and experiences. Ola seems to be playing defense. Paradoxically, Rapido's execution can be explained by two dual and often competing forces: focus and opportunism. One of the defining traits about Ola is its ability to spin businesses up quickly depending on vibe. When food delivery becomes popular, it creates a food delivery business. When quick commerce is in fashion, it starts doing 10-minute deliveries. Tomorrow, if bootcut jeans make a comeback, I fully expect Ola to jump on the bandwagon. None of these businesses usually go anywhere, but Ola is there, always waiting to leap into the water to swim where the current goes. Chances are that most people, knowing this, would classify Ola as the quote unquote opportunistic company. All of these people are wrong. Rapido's opportunism is, in fact, much more measured, but it's also deadlier and way more effective. Last week, when I wrote about how ONDC is losing, I wrote that restaurants are walking back from ONDC because they no longer believe it can save them from Swiggy and Zomato. Guess who neatly stepped in to rescue them? Here's the story again from the Financial Express titled Rapido is in advanced talks with the NRAI for food delivery foray. The story goes, quote, ride-hailing unicorn Rapido is in advanced discussions with the National Restaurant Association of India, NRAI, to onboard restaurants for its foray into the food delivery space. NRAI, which represents over 500,000 restaurants across the country, has long been advocating for a viable third player in a market currently dominated by Swiggy and Zomato, together accounting for a 95% share. Close quote. I don't think anyone, not even Ola, could credibly tell you how many times the company has attempted food delivery. The earliest news article I could find date back to 2015. Ola made another attempt in 2017 after acquiring Food Panda, which was a food delivery startup. Then Ola tried again in 2019 with something called Ola Cafe, which it shut down in 2022. Now it's back again with another avatar of food delivery, this time on ONDC. It's called Ola Dash, which is now a 10-minute food delivery, which I'm told is quite fashionable. Meanwhile, all this time, Rapido watched and waited. It waited and waited. And now it has struck, targeting the right people with the right offering at the perfect time. The opposite of opportunism that diversifies your business is focus, which forces you to stay in your lane. And well, for years, Rapido's founders have stuck to what they were doing while Bhavesh Agarwal discovered side hustles like electric cars, AI, semiconductors, and mentoring Elon Musk. I suppose knowing when to be opportunistic and expand, and when to focus and do nothing else, is the simplest description of execution. Another theory is that Rapido just came up with a better business model. In the past, I've written about how companies like Meesho and Rapido disrupted incumbents like Amazon, Flipkart, Uber, and Ola by innovating not just on product but also on pricing. Both companies opted for a zero commission model, which fundamentally altered the dynamics of how sellers operate on those marketplaces. In fact, Rapido's zero commission model even forced Uber to change its business model. Rapido started off at the bottom of the market, aggregating two-wheeler cabs. Uber and Ola tried to fight it off, but then relinquished that segment thanks to a combination of regulatory uncertainty and lower margins. Then Rapido went into autos, pushing Uber and Ola upmarket. Today, Rapido operates cabs, and Uber has no choice but to go even higher to create products and services like Uber Black. As long-time readers may recall, this is classic disruption theory. Yesterday, Rapido disrupted Uber and Ola. Today, it's trying to disrupt Swiggy and Zomato. Who's next? Both of these reasons explain why Rapido is doing better than Ola, but it doesn't explain Rapido's and Ola's valuations. Sometimes a company's performance is correlated with its valuation, but sometimes it isn't. Maybe the real reason is that Rapido didn't have to make the market. It arrived late, and from an investor's standpoint, that makes Rapido much more attractive than an Ola or an Uber. Essentially, the theory is that companies that have to go first to create a market are riskier bets for investors than companies that have to go later to take advantage of it. Seen purely as a risk reward equation, I imagine there are many more investors willing to bet on a new shiny startup that can take market share away from an incumbent than they will be on another startup to create a completely new market. Just look at Zepto as an example. Even though Swiggy started Instamart years earlier, there are enough investors ready to bet on shorting Swiggy's chances of holding on to the quick commerce market and for Zepto to take a chunk of it away. Companies that come in late also have the advantage of cleaner, sparser cap tables, which makes it a much easier and attractive decision for investors. Maybe it's not just Rapido that's more focused and opportunistic. Even Rapido's investors are more focused and opportunistic. And at the end of the day, the ultimate reason why Rapido can become Ola before Ola becomes Rapido comes down to just that. This is Praveen Gopal Krishnan, and today's edition of the Nutgraf was published on 10th May 2025. You can read the entire edition on our website at theken.com. Sound and production for today's episode has been done by Rajiv CN, and I'll see you again next week.